Hi everybody, Ian Bremmer here, and a quick take. I want to talk about Gaza, which has not been as much in the headlines over the past month because so much other news has been emanating from Washington post Trump's inauguration. But he made some news on Gaza, and it's relevant to the ongoing war and ceasefire, which is this idea that the United States is going to take over Gaza, develop it, and make it into the Riviera, a new Riviera on the Mediterranean. Certainly, they have the beachfront property. They don't have the infrastructure, especially not after the war over the last year plus. Trump saying that no U.S. troops would be involved, but it's an enormous opportunity. The Palestinians would have to be resettled. It's not a new plan. He's been talking about this for the last year together with advisors. The idea that there's an enormous amount of money, particularly from the Gulf, that could be interested in investing on the ground, that security could be provided by the Egyptians, that the Palestinians could be temporarily resettled in Egypt, maybe in Jordan. They would, at least in principle, have the right to return. But I mean, how much money? Probably $20 billion minimum. What's temporary mean? Probably talking about a generation. The Palestinians likely to believe that, given what's happened on the ground in the West Bank. Hard to imagine. What does governance for the Palestinians look like? Well, Trump no longer supports a two-state solution, which he did support back in the days of the Abraham Accords. Others in the region certainly do, and they, at least in principle, though they're not willing to do an awful lot to bring that about. Of course, a two-state solution, if you are Arab in the region, doesn't necessarily mean democratic governance. After all, with the exception of Israel, it's not like you have democratically elected governments across these states. So you're probably talking about something more technocratic and appointed. But still, what's happened is, as Trump has been discussing this, the Jordanians and the Egyptians are unhappy and saying no way will they take any Palestinians. The Gulf states are unhappy. The UAE, which has discussed some of this plan with Israel directly, slow rolling how much they'd be willing to do. The Saudis saying they don't support it. And so Trump, with all of that, and with Prime Minister Netanyahu coming to Washington, D.C., said, fine, I'll make an announcement by myself. I'll just do it if you refuse to be a part of it. And then the U.S. diplomats, were spending day and night back channeling with Gulf allies, saying he didn't really mean he was going to take over all of it. He's not planning on taking over the land. Don't worry about it. What I would say is this is an opening strategy to try to get sort of all of the states in the region together with Israel and negotiate what the development of Gaza would possibly look like, to get some commitments for investment, to get some commitments for security. And there's a lot of space between all of the Palestinians are resettled, because certainly they're not all interested in leaving, but some of them certainly are, and you can hardly blame them, even though it's their homeland, because there is nothing left, and it's really hard to get humanitarian aid in, and it's not likely to get meaningfully better, even with the ceasefire, which may not hold up anytime soon. And given the fact that 80% of Israelis polled in the Jerusalem Post, which is a pretty middle of the road, survey group and media institution in Israel, say they want all of the Palestinians in Gaza resettled. Given that, and given the fact that if you were to engage in reconstruction, that security would be necessary, there's going to be an effort to at least create buffer zones, which means more resettlements internally, and a desire to allow Palestinians that want to leave the ability to leave. And Trump would love to create some facts on the ground there. The way he's creating facts on the ground by bringing some illegal migrants in the United States to Guantanamo. There aren't facilities for them, so they set up some tents. But even if it's only one or two planes, suddenly it becomes a policy. And that's precisely what the Trump administration wants to see with the Palestinians in Gaza, is that if you're getting out a few bus loads or a few ship loads or a few plane loads, then suddenly it's not a question of can they be resettled, but how many and over what time. It's a very different policy discussion. And that's exactly where they and the Israeli government are looking to get to. Now, who's going to take these Palestinians? Right now, nobody. Trump was asked if he was going to be willing to, if the United States would. His response was, well, it's really too far, which doesn't seem to be his perspective for the white Afrikaners in South Africa who are even farther away. So maybe it's not really about distance. It might be something else. But nonetheless, I do expect that when Trump says that the Egyptians and Jordanians will take some, that if they are paid to take some, and what some means and what kind of population and how they're going to be vetted is all to be discussed. But some would not surprise me at all. Might be a matter of hundreds or a few thousand. I don't think it's a matter of hundreds of thousands. But again, it starts that conversation, it changes the policy. And especially if we end up reopening the fighting in Gaza, which I think is quite likely over the coming weeks and months, then there becomes more urgency to engage for some of the Palestinians there in more resettlement, more willingness to. So that's what I think this is all about right now. We are not close to a Palestinian state. We are not close to a broad agreement that would allow the Gulfies to engage fully in what Trump is demanding, or to expand the Abraham Accords to include Saudi Arabia opening diplomatic ties with Israel. But all of this is on the table and is the backdrop for what Trump is putting forward right now. So that's what we're talking about, and something we'll be watching really closely. Hope everyone's doing well, and I'll talk to you all real soon.